You're on.
So, good afternoon, Mr. Speaker and other members of the committee. My name is Abigail Sampson, Ontario Regional Coordinator for NORML Canada, the national organization for the reform of marijuana laws in Canada. Since its founding in 1970, NORML's mission is to move public opinion sufficiently to legalize the responsible use of cannabis by adults and to serve as an advocate for consumers to assure they have access to high-quality cannabis that is safe, convenient, and affordable. There are now currently over 150 NORML chapters worldwide working hard in their communities to reform cannabis laws. NORML Canada commends the government's commitment to legalizing cannabis federally, becoming the first G20 nation to regulate the production and sale of cannabis for all adults. Globally, there are other jurisdictions with an existing and thriving cannabis culture whose policies, lessons, and successes we can learn from. The following are 5 key considerations we wish to put forward to the committee. Number 1, stopping ongoing arrests leading up to legalization. NORML Canada says the government should immediately halt arrests for simple possession and other cannabis offenses leading up to legalization in July 2018, and if charged, the government should stop seeking sentences of actual imprisonment and focus on constructive alternatives now. Canadians should not continue receiving criminal records for a substance which will be legal in less than 1 year. Canada will save significant resources on policing and prosecuting these simple offenses against otherwise law-abiding Canadians. Number 2, criminal penalties for noncompliance under the Cannabis Act. While NORML commends the government for creating a ticketing scheme for minor transgressions, the maximum penalties for a serious breach should be similar to the Tobacco Act in Canada. We believe imprisonment should be reserved for only the most serious of abuses and be no greater than penalties for tobacco and alcohol. Further, cannabis laws disproportionately target our most vulnerable populations and communities, burden our criminal justice system, and have been demonstrated to be more harmful than the cannabis itself. Examples from other jurisdictions. While there are some harsher penalties for those who have committed more serious offenses against the state's cannabis laws, in California, the sale or delivery of cannabis by an individual over the age of 18 to individuals between the ages of 14 and 17 years carries a felony charge with a punishment of 3 to 7 years incarceration. By comparison, distribution of an equivalent of more than 30 grams of dry cannabis under the Cannabis Act is considered an indictable offense and carries a maximum penalty of 14 years imprisonment, far more severe and disproportionate than the harms caused by cannabis use alone. Our Ledane Commission in 1972, some 45 years ago, recommended that the federal government hybridize the trafficking of cannabis, providing a maximum of 6 months on summary conviction and 5 years on indictment. Number 3, accessible requirements for participation in the legal cannabis market, including cooperative growing. NORML Canada believes in a diverse legal cannabis landscape where community gardens, cooperatives, and designated growers can participate and compete with larger corporations. Accessible requirements for participation in the cannabis industry are key to a successful legalization strategy and must support the integration of a variety of stakeholders into the new legal cannabis market, including the expertise found in the gray or illicit space. Examples from other jurisdictions. California is one example of an inclusive transition of its existing cannabis practices into the regulated space. For close to 19 years, community gardens and cooperative grows operated outside of a regulatory scheme. Currently, the text of the MCRSA, the Medical Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, allowed these establishments the opportunity to continue to operate until January 2018, just as long as their businesses complied with zoning, local, and state requirements. This window provides them an opportunity to apply for appropriate licensing. Rather than shutting down these businesses, the good players are afforded the ability to remain open, serve their clientele, and become a part of the legalized framework. Number 4, pardoning past cannabis offenses. NORML Canada will continue to advocate for a legal cannabis regime which allows for pardons of past cannabis-related convictions and clearly addresses the prejudice associated not only with convictions, but also cases which resulted in stays of proceedings, withdrawals, and acquittals, as well as records in police databases, even if no finding of guilt ever occurred. Further, prior cannabis-related records should not bar Canadians from participating in the new legal cannabis market, including both production and distribution. Examples from other jurisdictions. In an attempt at providing reparations to Oakland residents that were jailed for offenses related to cannabis possession in the last 10 years, City Council has approved a program to help convicted drug felons get into the legal cannabis industry. Called the Equity Permit Program, the first-in-the-nation idea will allow recently incarcerated individuals the opportunity to receive medical cannabis industry permits. By implementing this program, Oakland is ensuring that those entering the legalized cannabis scheme have the demonstrated experience and expertise required in running and growing a successful cannabis business, as well as recognizes the harms done by the war on drugs by allowing those who have been affected by it through incarceration an opportunity to participate. Number 5, driving under the influence. While NORML Canada discourages driving motor vehicles or operating complex machinery while under the influence of cannabis, the government should continue to investigate the development of a fair system that targets those drivers whose ability to drive is impaired and avoids the arrest and conviction of innocent Canadians based on the mere presence of cannabinoids in one's system, a per se limit. Per se limits refer to a specific concentration of a substance, for example, THC in blood or a blood alcohol concentration, or BAC, that triggers a criminal charge when the set limit or cutoff is exceeded. Per se limits, however, do not factor in impairment and may result in criminal charges for any user who exceeds the limit, even if no signs of impairment are demonstrated. Special consideration should be given to medical cannabis users who may use cannabis daily or near daily to manage their symptoms and ensure they are not unfairly targeted or criminalized by an arbitrary nanogram level. Many will exceed this limit, but their ability to drive will not be impaired in the least due to significant tolerance. Examples from other jurisdictions. In order to protect patients, the United Kingdom has enacted laws that allow for a medical defense if people are taking drugs, including cannabis, for medical reasons and are not impaired. The medical defense states that drivers are not guilty of per se offenses if they are not impaired and meet the following conditions. The medicine was prescribed, supplied, or sold to treat a medical or dental problem, and it was taken according to the instructions given by the prescriber or the information provided with the medicine. A medical defense for per se limits ensures that other evidence of impaired driving, rather than just the presence of THC, must be established to ensure patients are not unfairly criminalized for simply exceeding a per se limit. Per se limits are arbitrary, and especially if they are not rebuttable, they will not be in compliance with Section 7 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. In conclusion, by learning from other jurisdictions' experiences regulating cannabis, Canada has an opportunity to learn from their actions, integrate policies that work, and avoid the same mistake that lead to poor policy. Thank you.
And thank you very much. And now we